Hello, welcome to The Armin Show, where we talk about everything science, human behavior, creativity, and more. Thanks for joining, and make sure to subscribe.
Hey everybody, glad to have you on this one. This is a solo episode number 400. I wanted to do this of my own accord, leading you into the 400s, a brief one where I will go over episodes 300 to 400, a little bit of quick checking on what each one talked about, how that connects with later on. I'll just pick a few of the episodes from before, and more to be coming on the way. Glad to have you all supporting. Got a cool new intro and outro on this one. And then let's get into the material. And the intro and outro with Rebecca Lawson, who has been on the show before. Now, let's take a look at some of the past episodes as we make our way into the 400s with some good movement. Long-lived movement. You start it on your own and let life come at you afterward. So one thing that happened early on in the 300s was episode 303, panel episode with Azra Raza, Bill Sullivan, and Dan Cable on chance meetings. That was a cool panel episode. I would like to have more panel episodes moving into the 400s along with live streams. So that'll be a cool set of new things working forward. A couple of economists like Jan Eekhout on episode 304. Some great authors that I can see their books here, and I spoke with them previously. Roya was great. She brought Persian perspective on episode 310. Beginner's Guide to America. I am born in Iran. She was Persian, so that's a cool shared element there. Even right before that, 309, that was the one in Scotland with Lee Cronin. Maybe may have him on again in the future. What an opportunity that was. He really blew up this year. Went on the Lex Friedman podcast, other ones, which got, I believe, somewhere maybe 1 million or more views on that one, on life perspective and where we are going. A sense of time as well. Had a few attorneys on the show. Philosophers. I'm looking at the past episodes as I'm describing this. In-person episode with Kat. Kat will be back on actually in the near future. That was 318. In person, we talked about philosophy. Have had quite a bit of philosophy on the program. The in-person episodes are most memorable to me. 323 was a panel episode. Again, Emily Erickson, Susan Leotow, and Daniel Markovitz. Very cool. Economic thought, history, and ethics. Having a panel episode. I like that concept. Group episodes. More of that theme I would like to continue with. Moving forward here, we had Gary and Casper Kazazian, episode 329. That was in person on their fishing program, California Surf Fishing. That was cool. They have both been on before, but I don't think ever together. So that was nice to bring them on for that purpose. And their channel is booming. So nice to be part of that in some way. Todd Gashtan, 333. Todd may return to the show later in the year. Psychology, his book, The Art of Insubordination, great individual. And he has his 3 girls, if I recall correctly. Chris Boutte, 336. Wonderful. Very vocal individual on Twitter and various social media. Has good statements and always friendly. Glad to make a connection and would try to showcase opportunities to me, which was nice. Nice individual. Susan Leotow, back on 339. The Little Book of Big Ethical Questions, which is right here. The books are always accessible. Little Book of Big Ethical Questions. There. And she has been on, I think, 3 times in total, which is quite cool. 338, we had Morton Christensen and Nick Chater, the language game authors. I like having 2 authors on together. That's always very cool. We talked about improvisation, language, how language develops. I've had a couple of language individuals on the show. 340, Maëlys Bessery from France, about her books. written in French, but with English translations. One that came out after our talk. Wonderful. And she did a bit from her book in French, which was quite cool. Glad to speak with her. And communicated with her originally through Twitter, even through like a missed message. And then we connected. Onward we go. A few philosophers. Justin E.H. Smith was there on episode 344. Had an in-person episode with Christina Aguinaga about voice acting. She's a voice actor. John Alexander and Ariane Conrad on 348. A great duo. Their book Citizens. They are continuing to spread the message around the world, more so John. Ariane is a book supporter / builder, so if she moves on to the next book and the next book, supporting the authors, so that's cool. Juliana Schroeder from episode 350, who I found out about due to Ruben of the show Social Animal, and then later I had Ruben on the show, which I'll mention later, but that's cool. Juliana is at UC Berkeley, and has great sense of talking to strangers, people dynamics, that category. May have her on again in the future. Donald Hoffman, episode 351. That was a widely shared one. People like that. Donald Hoffman is well known. And a few individuals, including past guest Daniel James Smith, commented on that episode specifically and the importance of what Donald Hoffman talks about. Had in-person episode with Rebecca Faith Lawson, 355. That was by the ocean. Wonderful for the in-person episodes. Playa del Rey Beach. I talked about authenticity, perspective, and I think time. Going through time. Mary Child's book on 356. Great. The Bond King. She does wonderful with economics and at Planet Money, a very, very large show on the internet. 358, Corinne Lang. Corinne was on the show previous to her travels, and I was somewhat in the process of soon to be talking with her, but probably later in the year, in a couple months, when she returns from Peru. We'll have her back on the show for part 2. That was great in person. She's an attorney. We talked about travel, being an attorney, and sexual relations. So that was 358. Moving forward, had a few wonderful professors and authors. When I look back, it's great to see what you have done. It's nice to do a look back like this. Nicole Iturriaga, episode 364 at UC Irvine. That was wonderful in person, talking about Spain's past, her book Exhuming Violent Histories. Warm individual, and she signed the book, which was wonderful and very nice. That was cool to have. 366, Mackin Murphy. Mackin, solid individual. After that, has really done a lot of clips on social media, TikTok, other places about infidelity, which is his category of expertise, and continues his research past Oxford, now in Australia with Dr. Candice Blake over there at her research lab, which is cool. Mackin is wonderful, and I will expect to see him speaking a lot. 367, Corey Clark came back on the show. Wonderful to have Corey back on about victimhood for resources, motivated free will. She has very great information in the psychological category and adversarial collaborations to make science better. I thought that was wonderful. 368, Bronwyn Williams, who comes back later in a group episode about the future and economics. 370, Michael Shermer. That was in person in Santa Barbara. Wonderful to speak with Michael Shermer. He is the author of many books. I have now, I think, 5 or 6 of them. He gave me 5 or 6 at that time from his bookshelf. And it's nice that he did that. And it was very welcoming individual. Why the rational believe the irrational. On episode 373 was, actually 371 was with Andrew Stulman at Occidental College in person. Very cool. I really like the in-person episodes. I didn't realize there were this many, but they were wonderful. And he talked about the thinking lab, conceptual change, and he teaches psychology there. He is the chair of the psychology department. 373 was at UCLA with Yana Gallus, and she is a professor in strategy at UCLA Anderson School of Management. We talked about decision making, very wonderful, and some of the background being German. This is great. Now, Rama Chalapa, 375, from the book, Can We Trust AI? AI is this is before all the AI stuff was happening this year, artificial intelligence. We'll get more into that probably with other individuals as time goes on. But this was before that, along with other talks I've had about AI before that. Very nice information about can we trust artificial intelligence. Moving on, 377 was in person, John Coogan, close by. He's the founder of Soylent and Lucy, very large companies. We talked about his YouTube channel, which is growing very rapidly. He makes stories, technological stories on his channel. A lot of the individuals I've talked with are on great trajectories. 378, Temple Grandin, that was a large one. Liked on all platforms. Everybody's a big fan of Temple. Talked about autistic nature, people who think visually, visual thinking was the book, people who think in abstractions, and we got along wonderfully, very friendly individual who has impacted the farming industry quite a bit in the United States. 379 with Murray Pittock about Scotland, the global history. I went to Scotland. This was wonderful. Talking about it, I would say was the main individual on that as far as the history there. 381 was with Ruben that I mentioned earlier, which is the reason I spoke with Dr. Juliana Schroeder, Ruben of Social Animal. It was in person as well, about being true to yourself, reducing self-censorship. And his channel is doing great on YouTube. 383, Mikko Hipponen, substantial cybersecurity expert in Finland, very informative, and it felt good to talk with him. It felt like I was figuring out parts of my youth in the computing industry through speaking with him. So that meant a lot to me. Quite a substantial amount. If we go for 385, in person with Susan Finkbeiner at Cal State Long Beach on butterflies and convergent evolution. Had met her originally publicly, and then we did this talk in her lab, her classroom/lab at Cal State Long Beach. I thought that was super, and some of the clips on that were quite liked. Did a food for thought, which may bring back for Fridays with Rebecca Lawson on 387 about the family unit. Expressing yourself, making material. And it was from at her institution. That's where it was recorded. Moving on to 389, Sukun Chopra. Sukun has her channel Becoming an Epic Being, and was very personable. It was like talking to a fellow podcaster / content creator, which is my category, one of my categories of people. Very informative and brings emotional awareness in her postings. 390 was a duo with Rebecca Lawson and Bronwyn Williams, the futurist economist. So panel, and with South Africa and Florida together, talking about stories that we have in society, optimism, keeping an optimistic attitude, and a variety of topics. So that was quite cool. Groups are preferred. 393, Gary Kazazian back on the show about his goals with his channel. I think it was his 5th or 6th time, which is very cool. And his mindset going forward. Then we had Leroy Hood and Nathan Price, duo, the Age of Scientific Wellness authors on 395. They were great. One is almost like the mentor figure for the other, and they were speaking about things that I think we will see in the next 5-10 years in the health space. So that was a good preview. 396 was in person with John DeFrocia, who was on, I believe, episode 6. So episode 6 to episode 396 with John, we talked about relationships and a lot of popular / controversial topics. Pretty cool one right there. And then closing out the ones to the end, 397 was with Faith in person, Faith Lemasters, on her magazine, L'Avenir de la Mode, and how she has released the first edition, which is cool. More to come with that. 398, Srinivas Rao, the artificially intelligent creative. I've known Srinivas for a long time, so to have him on the show is wonderful. And he has real strong systems for his show and everything he does to make things frictionless. I hope to implement some more of his methods in my show as well, so that it can blossom more. And the last one before this one was with Charlotte Grisol on focus, motivation, and creative experimentation. And she was in Belgium. So that is a bit on the last 100 episodes. Some picked out elements there, a little bit of updates. This one is 400. Very cool to get to 400. And good material moving onward. We'll have intro, outro, more features, and have plans in the mind, including can be group, can also be live streaming. I would like to try that without any technical issues. That would be good to be doing. Glad for the support across the time. Anybody I've spoken with, those of you who watch the show, it helps build the program into closer to what I would see it as. So that's a nice feature. And I will leave it at that simply for this one, a shorter episode. On the next one, we'll have a discussion as tends to be and continue with the program. Always leave a comment. Feel free, all those things to support the program. It's cool. And you never know. 400, that is substantial. 300, substantial. 200, substantial. This is a wonderful thing. It's nice to build something along the way and more good things to come.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please comment any takeaways you had, and we'll see you on The Armin Show next time.